All right, here we are. Welcome to the Turn Holiday Remorse into a Fit New Year masterclass. Thank you to those of you who are here live. And I know this was sort of thrown together last minute, so a lot of you requested the replay. So thank you for joining us afterwards. Really kind of how this class came to be is I was chatting with my business coach who's helped me get this book kind of across the line. And she was mentioning she had similar struggles that I did when she was younger with binging and restricting and things like that. And she was talking about just how hard the holiday season used to be for her, in that she would just, binge every day, feel terrible about it, then want to, kind of make up for it. And it was really interesting because I haven't really thought about that phase of my life in a long time. I just do not feel that way anymore. I don't do those things to nearly that extent anymore. And it brought back such memories. And I was realizing that there are a lot of women who can relate to that still, and who are sort of simultaneously telling themselves, I don't want to keep engaging in this behavior, and then see the cookie tin and are like, well, it's just, once a year, once the holidays are over, I'll clean the kitchen out and I won't do this anymore. So let me just make the most of it. And it can be a really um, kind of confusing and like conflicting time where you do want to enjoy the holidays. You do want to indulge. There are some things that are special, and you don't want to feel like you're restricting yourself through the holidays. And also, you hate the feeling of overdoing it day in and day out, and you're beating yourself up about it. And it just can be a really confusing place to be. So that's why we're here. And, like I said in the emails, what I really want to accomplish in the next 30-45 minutes is to address, how to stop beating yourself up about whatever has happened up until this point. Generally, one of the hardest things is that we do whatever thing we said we wouldn't do. And then we have the secondary reaction to it where we feel guilty, we're ashamed, that sort of thing. And then those feelings perpetuate what we do going forward. So we're going to talk about how to be nicer to yourself, how to wipe the slate clean so that you're not continuing to beat yourself up about stuff that has already happened and you cannot change. And then we're going to talk about what you can do this week to, and even on this call, to help break this cycle and help you go into the new year prepared and feeling good and ready to make some changes, as opposed to just kind of like screeching in on the heels of New Year's Eve. So let me know in the chat. Put an O in the chat if you have experienced any amount of overindulging between like now and Thanksgiving. I don't even know where my chat is. Maybe you guys don't. Maybe you guys don't either. I can't find my chat. Hang on. Oh, there we go. We got some O's coming in. There's the chat. All right. Yep. I'll give an O myself one. Tell me what your kind of biggest indulgence has been. We're at my in-laws right now, and I am a sucker for those like sweetened popcorn things where it's like they're coated in like caramel or chocolate, or they have peanuts in there and stuff like that. That stuff can feel like my kryptonite sometimes, and that's like been my number one thing that I'm like, all right, that was good. I can stop now, and I've had enough. I've enjoyed it, and like next thing you know, you're like, oh, just a bit more, and then you want to try to get the perfect bite. So what's kind of been the thing that you guys have felt calling your name? I'm curious. Let me know in the chat. So this is super normal, and that's the first thing that I want to remind you. It's very any cookie, yeah, I get that. It's very easy to let your brain run away with this sort of behavior, and to take it from, oh, I had an episode of overeating, and your brain takes it and runs with it. And next thing you know, what you're telling yourself is you are a miserable failure who is always going to struggle and never going to be successful, right? It like grows into this larger than life thing. And if you take occasion to reflect back on it, like we will on this call, you realize it's a pretty big leap, right? Me eating, 6 more cookies than I meant to. Like, how did I possibly get from there to you're never going to lose weight and you're doomed forever, right? That's a big jump, but that's what our brains tend to do. And I think it can be so eye-opening to realize the impact that the way you think and the way you talk to yourself has on your behavior. So those of you who are here live, let me know in the chat as well. with a number one. If you said that you wouldn't overeat X food, the cookies, whatever was around, and you did it anyway. Let me know with the one in the chat. I'm there with you guys. Right? This is normal. This happens to everyone. And I can understand if you guys are thinking like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You just said that you like don't really do this anymore. And also here you are with us saying, yeah, I overate this popcorn and I said I wouldn't, right? I want to be very clear that successfully overcoming this cycle and these behaviors does not look like perfection. It looks like you are still an imperfect human. And sometimes you have the perfect storm of factors. You have the opportunity, you have the availability, you are, just like tired or stressed enough, and you still do the things. So the point of this is not to set the bar so high that you're like, all right, next year, starting this year, I am never going to overeat again. Of course you are. It's going to happen. And just the acceptance of that is so important, because then when it happens, you don't get all bent out of shape like, I'm a miserable failure, I did it again, right? You're just like, okay, yeah, this is part of it. Lindsay, I know we've talked about this before, but a big part of what progress looks like is these sort of, destructive behaviors becoming fewer and further between, becoming less severe when they do happen, right? When I'm talking about this popcorn, 10 years ago, I would have eaten the whole damn bag. 12 servings, 1,400 calories. I would have eaten the entire thing. I would have eaten it well beyond when I was enjoying it, because I would have been telling myself, this is bad. You shouldn't be eating this. You already ate too much. Therefore, you blew it. You might as well go out. In fact, eat so much of it that you feel sick so that you can remind yourself that that food makes you sick and you won't want to do it again, right? All sorts of mental games. I know you guys can relate to that. And so when I talk about overeating this popcorn now, I'm talking about a few servings, or maybe I had, I can't exactly remember the specifics. That's how not big a deal it was, right? Instead of festering over it for days and being able to tell you exactly what happened, it's more of an afterthought, right? It's a thing that like, oh, it happened, but I'm not dwelling on it. So I want to be clear that like that's what you can expect, is that there are going to be times that you just slip up and you do the thing, and it doesn't need to be a big deal. And the way you learn to think about it is what will dictate that difference. So instead of it becoming the spiral of, well, I've already blown it, so I'm going to eat and drink whatever I want the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the year, it can just be like, oh, right, that's that thing that I am trying not to do anymore. And you move on, right? So fewer and further between, less severe when they do happen, and you bounce back more quickly, right? Your refractory period is shortened. Instead of it taking you 5 days to pull yourself out of the doom spiral, it takes you 5 hours, right? All right. So let me know in the chat as well. Give me any sort of emoji. You've got that little emoji face down there. Give me any sort of emoji if you have had the following experience. You going into the holidays, you're already concerned about the events you have going on, all the temptations that they're going to be. And it slowly becomes this slippery slope where you're just like, I don't have enough days in a row of normalcy to like get into my routine. Every few days I've got a thing. There's, cookies in the break room. We're baking at my mom's house, all sorts of things. We're traveling. And you just sort of get yourself into this habit of overindulging, probably not exercising as much. And as it gets closer and closer to the new year, you just sort of are telling yourself, like, why start now, right? There's only a few days until January. January is when I'm going to really hit it hard. And therefore, your behavior in this week, that's why I'm doing it on the 26th, is because we have the rest of this week. But most of us are, most of us not on this call are going to go into it thinking like, well, I only have 5 days left in the year. I might as well get it out of my system now, because January 1st is a whole new me, right? And what happens is that, yeah, yep, I hear you, Tammy, and I'm sorry, that's a sad face. But yes, right. So, yep, I can relate. Oh, I love the upside down smiley. I can relate, right? I know this because I have lived this. And you are not alone for feeling this way. So what ends up happening is like the closer you get to the new year, the more you're sort of like holding on to the pleasures of the holidays, that you're just like, oh, I'm already thinking about how hard I'm going to hit it in January, how much I'm going to restrict, how much I need to like make up for this. And that's going to suck. So if I have the next 5 days I better make the most of them. I better really enjoy this so that when I cut myself off completely from everything that's enjoyable, it won't feel as bad, right? And then what happens is by the time January 1st rolls around, you're feeling so crappy and so badly about yourself and so disappointed in your choices, especially if going into the holidays, you had been successfully losing weight and you were feeling good going into them. And now you feel like you've gained back however much, 2, 3, 5, 10 pounds. Your head is probably not in the best place, right? You're really beating yourself up about that. And what do we do when we're at one end of the spectrum? We want to swing the pendulum back the other way. That you're like, I'm feeling so bad right now. I don't care what it takes. I will do whatever to make sure that I feel better as quickly as possible. Where does that leave us? It leaves us going back to whatever diet, quick fix, shortcut, detox, kickstart type thing we've defaulted to in the past, right? Because we haven't spent the time between now and the new year preparing and being intentional and thinking, what do I want to be different this upcoming year so that I do not find myself in this position 365 days from now, right? When we, out of desperation, go back to whatever thing, Weight Watchers or 75 Hard or Whole30 or whatever, all we're doing is further exacerbating this cycle. Because as we all know, having done all of these things, what happens at the end of a time-based, very rules-centric approach? You're counting down the days until you can have whatever has been off limits for whatever period of time, right? And here we go. We're just that pendulum swinging back and forth again. I'm restricting, I'm overdoing it. I'm restricting, I'm overdoing it. This is very familiar. We end up doing this month after month, year after year. And this is the cycle that needs to break. This sort of all or nothing, living the extremes approach is the number one thing that we need to break so that this time next year, you're feeling so, so much better. So I would like to start with having you guys, if you don't mind, and I will not read your names on the recording or anything, but those of you who are here live, I would love if you felt comfortable sharing with me, and you can even do it down at the bottom in the chat. It says to, and right now it says to everyone. If you would feel more comfortable, not that there's a ton of people here, but if you'd feel more comfortable, you can direct message this to me. But I'd love if you guys would share with me some of the things that you've been telling yourself with regards to food, drinking, exercise, yourselves, etc. Because I want to have some examples of those real thoughts so we can talk about how to start talking and thinking differently to ourselves, right? So this might be something like, I can't control myself around cookies, or sugar, I'm addicted to sugar, or no matter what I tell myself, I always end up overeating. Things of that nature. I'd love if you guys would share one or two of those thoughts with me. Because really, I know they might not be pleasant to type out in words. It's important that we develop an awareness of what those thoughts actually are, because we don't generally question them. And this was so eye-opening to me when it was sort of first brought to my attention by a business coach, is like that our thoughts are not facts and not everybody has the same thoughts, right? We tend to just think these things. Here's an example just came in. I have a huge sweet tooth, right? That might sound like pretty innocuous, right? It doesn't have a negative connotation. You're not saying I'm a bad person because I have a sweet tooth. It just feels very matter of fact, right? You're just like, there's no doubt in my mind, I have a huge sweet tooth. Okay. So this is a great example, actually. The issue is that when we say these things over and over again to ourselves, we come to believe that they are true facts and we act accordingly, right? So when you are faced with sweets, the recurring thought in your mind is, I have a sweet tooth, right? What sort of feeling does that lead to if you have an array of sweets in front of you and your first thought is, I have a huge sweet tooth? It probably makes you feel a combination of like excited and maybe a little anxious or a little out of control or defeated, where you're just like, these are going to taste so good. And also, I know I'm gonna eat way too many of them. Then how do you behave when you have that thought on repeat, right? You lean into it. Our brains want to be aligned with who we think we are. So your brain looks for evidence that you are being consistent, right? So I have a huge sweet tooth becomes I'm going to act like someone who cannot resist temptation. These sweets are as good as gone because that's just who I am. That's my identity is a person with a sweet tooth. Another one I hear really often is I'm just an all or nothing person. I'm fine if I avoid it altogether, but if I have even a tiny bite, it's a slippery slope into, just waking up with a bed full of wrappers, right? They feel true. And we have past experience that back up those things. But the problem is if we continue to believe them and repeat them, they're going to remain true. I have control until I don't. That's a really good one. And what's interesting is like all of these thoughts have served us at one point, right? I have control. That starts off really well. And likely what happened is that this thought came from experience. It came from feeling really in control, feeling really good about it, and then having some sort of, misstep or slip up where you don't have control and you just sort of tack on the tail end of that. And now it becomes I have control until I don't. And what happens then? You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? You're not saying I have control a lot of the time and sometimes I slip up or I'm imperfect. It's I have control until I don't. So it's like you're just waiting around for like when is that second part going to kick in, right? I tell myself I can't do this. Okay. Prime example. I can't do this. Does that make your brain want to look for solutions? Absolutely not. That shuts your brain right down. So, oh, I can't do it anyway. Why bother? Why bother even trying? And that in and of itself kind of becomes a safety mechanism of like, well, if I don't try or if I don't give my best effort, then when I inevitably fail, I have that to fall back on. It doesn't hurt as badly. It doesn't rock me to my core as much because I always can sort of feel like, well, I could have tried harder, but and if I had tried harder, I probably would have been successful, but I didn't. So like that's why I failed, right? Your brain is trying to like soften the blow of what you feel like is inevitability in your failure. Those chips are calling me because of my bad day. Great one, right? We tie in, food absolutely can be pleasure and enjoyment and celebration and memories and family and all sorts of things. Food does not need to just be fuel. But what a lot of us have done, and I can very much relate to this, and anybody who has young kids, I think, can as well, or a stressful job or anything, we use food to fill emotional voids that it has no business filling, right? Does your day get better because you have the chips? Maybe for a second. Oh, these chips taste so good. The first handful tastes really good. After that, you keep wanting to match that level of pleasure that you got from the first bite. So what do? Volume. You're like, well, that third bite didn't taste as good, but if I have 8 bites, maybe the 8 bites combined will taste as good as the first bite did, right? You overeat. And then, in addition to having a bad day that you still haven't addressed or sat with, now you're feeling badly because you overate again after you told yourself you wouldn't. And you're adding this whole secondary layer of negativity on top of an already bad day. There's some great examples. Thank you guys for sharing. All right. So what I want to remind you is that you are a worthy, valuable, lovable human being, regardless of any of this. And your behaviors around food and around exercise do not change that. Your worth is not contingent on you hitting your step goal every single day. Your value is not hinging on you eating perfectly. You, as you are, as an imperfect human being, are worthy and valuable and lovable and loved. And you likely already know and believe that about the other people that you love in your life, right? If your daughter or your mom came to you and said, like, I'm feeling really bad. I ate all of the cookies that I was intending to give away to my coworkers. And not only do I feel physically ill, I'm really mad at myself. I feel terrible. you would not say like, oh, well, I loved you before, but now that I know that you are completely out of control and you have this major sweet tooth, I will love you when you pull yourself together, right? You would never say that to anyone else. So one of the things that I really urge you to focus on, not just in the rest of this year, but going forward, but because we have, hopefully you have some downtime these next few days, is to just become more aware of the thoughts that you're telling yourself and give yourself a 3-question litmus test. Some of you guys may have heard this on podcast episodes before and in previous trainings, but this is really, really important work. And what better time to do it than when the temptations are aplenty and you don't have the distractions of work and school and all that stuff, right? So we have a few days where you can just sort of like work on developing the awareness. I would encourage you, I have a notebook that is at my side at all times. I would encourage you the next few days to keep even a note in your phone, but just document when thoughts pop into your head and start just getting some sort of this list of like, what is the soundtrack in my head, right? And then take yourself through this 3-question. This is funny. This is the German way of counting. They do thumb first, 1, 2, 3. And it's like the only thing that has remained from our time in Germany is like that. I count that way now. So the first question, once you've identified these thoughts, the first question you want to ask yourself is this true? And your knee-jerk reaction might be like, yeah, of course it's true, right? Because we believe our thoughts. So what I want you to do is start looking for evidence to the contrary. And it might be as kind of cut and dry or straightforward as, you know what? Last week I had a bad day and I didn't overeat the chips. I was busy getting stuff ready for Christmas and I just I wanted them, but then I sort of forgot and I just ended up not eating them. So I guess that is evidence that chips do not need to coincide with a bad day. If it's a sweet tooth, maybe it's like, well, you know what? I definitely like sweets, but not all of them. There's always, that one cookie in the multi-pack that you're just like, man, I could do without those. Or, a certain flavor profile that you're like, well, I eat a lot of sweets and I enjoy them, but not every sweet ever. Or maybe again, I do have a sweet tooth, but the other day at work, I had a really good lunch and I was feeling satisfied and I actually was able to just walk past the treats and not really think about it, right? It can be a really small instance. It can be 4 out of 5 times yesterday. I picked up a Hershey Kiss when I went into the kitchen, but that one time I didn't. So there's evidence that I'm not completely powerless, right? So look for any little shred of evidence. And it doesn't even need to be directly related, right? So another, example that came in, I tell myself I can't do this. Well, what are other areas of your life that you tell yourself you can do things? Often what I see is we have these really successful, powerful, well-adjusted women in other areas of our lives, right? You're thriving in your career. You know that you're a good mother and you're doing your best. You give back to your community, right? You feel like you're doing a good job in everything but your health and your weight loss. So borrow from that. If you are capable of accomplishing things in another area of your life, you are capable of doing it here too. So maybe when you ask yourself, is it true? Maybe you're not calling directly on something food or fitness related. Maybe you're calling on something from your work life or from your interactions with your kids. And you're just sort of gathering a little bit of data that says this is not an absolute, right? Because that's how we treat our thoughts, is that they are absolutely true all the time, no matter what. And what we want to do is just start introducing sort of that shred of doubt that this is not true 100% of the time. All right, so that's question number 1. Question number 2, is this helpful? So when I tell myself I can't do this, is that helping me do it? Of course not. When I tell myself I need these chips because I'm irritable, is that helpful? No, of course not. So most of these thoughts, this is a very straightforward, no, they are not supporting me acting differently. So that's question number 2. Question number 3, is it kind? And some of them, have a huge sweet tooth. It's not unkind. It is just sort of neutral. It's just sort of matter of fact. But one I can't do this. No, of course that's not kind. You wouldn't go around saying that to anybody else. Oh yeah, good luck. I don't think you can do it, right? You wouldn't do that. So those are the 3 questions you want to ask yourself to sort of test out. Do I want this thought or thoughts like it to come with me into the new year? And again, I want to be clear that we've got whatever it is, 6 days till the new year. you're not going to completely erase these thoughts from your mind. But that can be the goal, is that you work on getting them further and further back in your mind, that they're not the first thing that pops up, right? We all have moments of self-doubt. That's part of like our survival mechanism, is like we look for the negative because we want to make sure that we survive. So it's normal to have this inner critic in our heads. But we get to decide the volume on that critic as compared to the volume on like the inner cheerleader. And what we really need is the cheerleader to be built up and the critic to be shrunk, so that you have a better balance of voices in your head that help you show up like the person that you want to be. So that's one thing that I would like you to work on throughout this week to help you stop being such an asshole to yourself about where you are now or what you've done these last couple of weeks, or just, anything, period. And then I want to work on wiping the slate clean. What happens a lot of the time is we bring the baggage, we bring the drama, and it affects what we do from here on out, right? This is the epitome of that cycle that I was talking about earlier, where it's like you sort of snowball, feeling worse and worse through the rest of the year, and then feel desperate to feel better. So you go right back to something restrictive that isn't going to last long, and around we go. And a big part of this is because we are not wiping the slate clean. We're not forgiving ourselves from the past, and we are not learning from it. This is really important. That I can't remember, maybe I was just interviewed on a podcast when we were talking about this, that just as important as forgiving the past is showing up differently in the future, right? It's I think we all have kind of this combination of being really hard on ourselves at certain times and really good at justifying our behaviors at other times. And what that can end up being is like you overeat and you feel terrible about it, and you're like, all right, I gotta, I'm just not gonna do this again. Tomorrow's gonna be a brand new day. And then tomorrow happens, you overeat again, and then you're thinking like, well, I didn't sleep well, and so brought this food, and it would have been rude to say no. And right, we start coming up with all of these like justifications for why we were at odds with what we said we'd do. So I think we have both of those kind of skills, and we need to have both of them, but we need to be more intentional about when we implement each one. So I want you right now, whenever you're listening to this, to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and say out loud to yourself. You guys are all on mute, so don't worry, they won't be on the recording. Say out loud to yourself, I forgive you for any overeating or any time up until right now where I have not followed through on what I said I would do. It helps to hear the words out loud because it makes them feel more real. So say it out loud to yourself. If your eyes are still closed, you can open them now. What I want you to do now, though, is, and if you're here live, I'd love to see some of these in the chat. What are some of the lessons that you can take from this holiday season? And I do not want those lessons to be, I just can't be around cookies. Next year, no sweets are coming in the house. Those are not the lessons we're after. But I want you to reflect from a judgment-free place and see what comes up for you. This is a skill, what we're doing right now is a skill that we use in our coaching program, Gone for Good, called compassionate ownership. It's the ability to forgive yourself and to reflect without judgment, and also to take responsibility for your behaviors going forward. And the best way to change your behaviors going forward is to figure out what about them in the past hasn't served you. Like, what has led me down this road, and how do I make sure that I don't continue to go down that road? I talk about this all the time with weekends. Like, weekends are predictable. We know they're going to happen, just like the holidays. Every year, they're going to happen. So what we really need is to stop getting caught off guard by them when we have all sorts of experience with them that we can call on to figure out, how do I want to change things, right? So if you know every weekend I am so stressed and run down from the rest of the week that all I want Friday afternoon is a cocktail, and I know that that cocktail turns into 4, and I know that then I wake up feeling like crap and I skip my workout, and then I don't want to grocery shop, so we just order takeout. If you know that's happening predictably most weekends, you got to figure out what's going to change about it, right? I just need more willpower. I just need more discipline. I just need more motivation. That is not the answer. That is how you continue to beat your head against the same wall and wonder why it's not turning into a door. So based on the experiences you've had these last few weeks, thinking about when are the times that I did overdo it? When are the times that I didn't follow through on what I said I would do? What are some lessons you can garner from there? And they don't need to be like perfectly phrased or manicured. Just kind of brain dump whatever is coming up for you. If you're here live, do it in the chat. If you're listening to the replay, do it on a piece of paper. And we can just sort of like form them into something useful for going forward. So here's one that just came in live. I can allow indulgences, but they must happen in a structure. Very interesting. 3 meals, 1 snack, dinner, and done. I love that. Okay, so here, this person is building in. I do want to indulge. I don't want to go through the holidays watching everybody else eat stuff and feel like I can't have it or tell myself that I can't have it. I do want to indulge. And also, my guess is very much like myself, you have probably learned from experience that if it's a like, oh, I just like swung by the kitchen and like they happen to be there, and here I am standing over the counter eaten until I kind of like come to, that doesn't work for me. This is actually very relatably, this is what happened with the popcorn. Is I was like putting something away in the pantry or getting it out of the pantry, and I saw like what was left of this bag of popcorn, and it was like a couple of moments of like quiet to myself. My husband has a big family, so there's like always a lot going on. I think the pantry was like warmer than the rest of the house, and it just like that circumstance of like being alone, having the opportunity, etc., led to my just like opening it and like eating in the pantry, right? So I love that you're like, okay, I can indulge, but it's going to be intentional. It's going to be, it doesn't need to be, okay, you indulge at 5:45 every evening, but more so like, I'm not going to do it on the fly. And that's sort of an if then statement you can give yourself, or a personal rule or a guideline that you can create for yourself is, if I'm going to indulge, it's on purpose. It's not going to happen by happenstance. It's going to be, we're having pie after dinner. I'm sitting around the table with my family. I'm really going to enjoy this. Because we all know that when you are more intentional, you do enjoy it more. When you're just like gobbling down the candy and you're barely even tasting it like that, you don't even get the enjoyment out of it. And then you feel badly about it. So I really like that. The other thing that you added in there is like the 3 meals, and then the 3 meals and then dinner and done. That's one that serves me really well as well. It's like, I know after dinner I'm not hungry. And I'm going to enjoy whatever I indulge in more if I actually do want it, rather than it's just like, well, it's nighttime, like, why not? So that's a really good one. That's an easy one where you just tell yourself like, oh, I don't eat after dinner, or right now I'm not eating after dinner. And there's no like bargaining with yourself. It's just, nope, not what I do. Love that. And then the structure of the 3 meals, knowing that like, if I'm having these balanced meals throughout the day, I'm not going to have nearly the cravings that I would if I were like saving up for, my calories for later, or if I were telling myself like, well, you're going to overdo it later, so you better get by on as few calories as you can now so that you can like sort of soften the blow later. That's something I used to do all the time. It'd be like, okay, just, lean proteins and veggies, just egg whites and veggies for breakfast, and then like just a Greek yogurt for lunch. And then it's like, well, mid-afternoon rolls around, I'm ravenous, I'm hungry. The kitchen is a minefield of temptations. And now I'm trying to tell myself no. Better balanced meals throughout the day is a great kind of learning lesson. Eating all the treats doesn't feel good later on. Yes, love that. And that's actually that's something that we'll get to in a minute. But writing down reminders like this can help a ton. One of the things that helped me break out of my own binge and restrict cycle was writing notes to myself after I would have an episode, and not doing it from a place of like, you effing suck and this is the worst, but more so like, I thought I was going to feel good. I don't. I feel terrible. I overdid it again. Like, I don't want to keep feeling this way. I feel so out of control, right? I was like just really being heartfelt with myself. And then on the flip side, when I would have a night where I wouldn't do it and I was feeling really proud of myself, I wrote that down too. It was like, it felt hard in the moment, but I feel so good now. It makes me still feel so powerful and so in control. And I would have like both of those pieces of paper when I felt kind of the urge coming on, and I would look at them and be like, you have a choice right now. You're at the crossroads. Where do you want to go? Like, which of these do you want to be you in an hour? So writing stuff down like that can make a huge difference, because like in the moment, your brain is like, yeah, it didn't feel good last time, but like this time it definitely will. Like, just do it again, right? So if you have it written down, it can be a good reminder that like, listen, brain, no, we're not doing this again. Sugary drinks and diet soda make me crave sugar all day long. Great connection there. A lot of times we don't pick up on kind of like the correlation between things. And I've noticed something similar as well. Is like it just sort of like sets your palate to like I want sweet things. And then it doesn't really matter what the sweet thing is. Maybe it's juice, maybe it's a cookie, maybe it's whatever. But it's just like, yeah, it can make you want more of it. So if you start off the day, you're like, oh, hot chocolate would feel so good. Like maybe it would, but is that then going to kind of like set the stage for the rest of the day being really sugar centric? And would it make sense then if you're going to do something sugary to do it, say later in the day where you can eat, sort of normally up until that intentional sugary thing, and then you're not feeling like the whole day is impacted by the cravings. Ooh, I like this one. It's okay. Park those thoughts and remember, I love me. That's really good. Yes, being your own number one support system, being your biggest cheerleader, and giving yourself permission. Like it is okay. It is okay to have these thoughts. We all have them, but they don't need to be the loudest station on the radio. If you guys have listened to the podcast, one of my favorite quotes, paraphrased, is that you can't stop a bird from landing on your head, but you can prevent it from building a nest in your hair, right? Like thoughts are going to pop in your head all day. That's fine. That's just what thoughts do, right? You probably have some racy thoughts about strangers, or you have, murderous thoughts about strangers, right? Like you can't, it's okay. That happens. But you can let them go right back out. They do not need to fester in your brain and become a thing. They can just be something that crossed your mind and then left. Crazy schedules lead to grabbing whatever is convenient, which is not always the best choice. Great one. Planning and meal prep makes those days so much easier and so much less likely to endlessly graze and add up so many calories at the end of the day. Yes, this is a great reflection. And this too would make a great one to write down, because we all, myself included, tend to forget that the planning and the prep does make a big difference. We resent the time that it takes on the front end. And a lot of times we just skip it for that reason. Like, I just don't want it. I don't want it right now. And then we pay the price later. So to make the connection between like, sure, it wouldn't be my favorite thing to do. I'd rather not, sacrifice this hour, but think about the ways that it pays off for me the entire rest of the week. And this, if you've done I know we have a couple clients and coaches here. This is a skill we talk about all the time in coaching called life admin. Sit down at least once a week and look at your schedule. Like, what do you have going on? Because most of us just kind of go with the flow and we're like, oh, shoot, we forgot about this happening. This kid has to be there. And I don't have anything in the house. Like 15 to 30 minutes once a week to look at your schedule and do some basic planning and prep will make a world of difference. And not just in like how the week feels, like you will feel much less frantic and like you're just along for the ride, but I lost my train of thought. Not only mentally, but physically. That if you're trying to lose weight, you got to be more intentional. So it's going to make your mental life much easier, that you're not just feeling like, hopefully the wind blows in my favor and everything is okay this week. But also, if you have a plan, you can look at where do I want to be at the end of this week, at the end of this month, at the end of this year, and you can reverse engineer it accordingly. So good. Thank you guys for sharing those. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about, the beginnings of like what you can do this week to set yourself up for 2024. So I want to take a couple minutes right now and have you just do a really quick journaling exercise. I know I did not tell you to bring pen and paper, so if you don't have your trusty Sidekick notebook with you, feel free to just open up like an email or a Word doc and just sort of type stream of consciousness. But what I'd love for you to reflect on for the next few minutes, we'll go between 2 and 5 minutes, is write down what you want to be different next year. And I don't necessarily mean like how many pounds you want to have lost or things like that. I more so mean like, how do you want to be feeling differently December 26, 2024? So this might be, I want to feel more in control. I want to feel like I've been more intentional. Things like that. What do you want to be different next year? And what we're going to do with this is then we're going to start to actually reverse engineer it. If those are your goals for this time next year, how do we get there? What does it require you learning, practicing, letting go of, etc., to make sure that that is your reality? So I'm going to pause the recording because I know it's super annoying to listen to 5 minutes of silence if you're on a recording. But those of you who are here live, I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on the clock and just write for a few minutes on kind of what comes up for you with that prompt. All right, we're back. Those of you who are catching the replay, it's been 4 minutes. Hopefully you did that exercise yourself. I know it's very tempting when you're listening to a replay to just be like, I will do that at a different time, and then you just never do. So I hope that you actually do it. You guys who are here live, I would love to hear just some of what came up with you, what came up for you. So put that in the chat if you feel comfortable. Some of what was coming up for me, sort of thinking about this prompt. Is a lot of what we've been talking about is sort of just shifting the what is the tense to the past. I used to have a huge sweet tooth, or I used to feel like I needed chips after a bad day. Just sort of shifting that to like a thing of the past. Maybe you want to feel less anxious going into the holidays this year, or less sort of bittersweet's not the right word, but like a contradiction of emotions. Like maybe you're excited about the holidays, but you're also sort of dreading, like, oh, I know I always gain 5 pounds. So maybe next year you want to go into the holidays with, more excitement and more positive emotions, rather than feeling like there's sort of that negative connotation or negative kind of consequence. Like, yeah, I'm gonna have a really good time, and also then I'm gonna have to work off this extra weight. Maybe it's just generally wanting to feel more in control or be better at forgiving yourself. Maybe after this conversation, you realized a large part of what's contributing to my kind of the snowball is that I don't forgive myself. I beat myself up, and then I, continue acting even worse. So I'd, like I said, I'd love if anybody live wants to share anything that came up for you, basically like your vision for this time next year. And ultimately what we're kind of getting at is, in order to know where to focus your energy this year, you need to know where you want to end up, right? And yes, weight loss is probably a piece of that. And knowing how much weight you want to lose is important as well. But more importantly, if I want to break out of this cycle of I just always gain weight during the holidays, nothing's going to be different, and therefore I'm going to go into January feeling really bad, needing to do a kickstart or a detox, and then rinsing and repeating the rest of the year, finding myself right back here at the end of 2024. If we want to break that cycle, we need to do some reverse engineering of like, what does my future vision look like, and what is the work that I need to do in the meantime to make that my reality. So that's the question I want you to mull over this week. Notice that I'm not telling you, all right, your goal for this week is to like hit this many step goal, this many steps, or this much strength, or to clean out your kitchen. A lot of the pre-work that we're doing is mental, because successfully changing your lifestyle, successfully losing weight and keeping it off and feeling more in control has so much more to do with where your head's at than any of that stuff. Here's one that just came in. I want to feel strong, capable, in control, and intentional with my actions. I love that. Mindful of where I'm spending my energy and efforts to help me feel like the best version of myself. This means healthy, confident, giving, organized, and balanced to me. This is so, so good. And as you can hear in this example, the focus right now transcends just weight loss. It's all interconnected. And this is why in our Gone for Good program, we have so much of an emphasis on lifestyle and mindset work, because yes, the exercise and nutrition matters, but the exercise and nutrition are going to feel much, much easier if you are doing the rest of this work. And if you are, when you're talking about being strong, capable, in control, intentional with your actions, you don't just mean with food, you mean with everything, with your energy. Where am I spending my energy? Am I, scrolling on TikTok, sitting on the couch with my family, or am I present and engaged? Am I stressing over, how much money I'm spending on gifts? Or am I really sort of thinking about like, what would be the best way to show people that I love them? Am I, just, it transcends just your health. And if you want to be the best version of yourself, that doesn't mean I want to be the thinnest version of myself, or I want to be the, the physically strongest, right? It means overall, of all the components of your lifestyle and of who you are, you want most of those to be in a high place that you're happy with, right? Not perfection, but you want to be looking at where are the areas that I'm not organized and how is that hindering me in that area specifically? And how is it spilling over into something else, right? If you're not organized with your, with your finances, then not only is that its own pickle, right? But it's probably leading to arguments with your spouse. It's leading to stress about money and paying off bills and things like that. It's, the lack of organization is then like someone mentioned earlier, planning and prep is so important. If you're not organized with your finances, odds are you're also not very organized with your weekly life admin or with like being intentional with when your workouts are happening or, what your meals are going to be that week. So working on being more giving or more balanced or more organized is also going to benefit your health, even though it's not necessarily what comes to mind first when you think about being healthy or losing weight. Love that example. Thank you for sharing that. So what I hope you guys will do in the next few days, and even if you're here live and you just feel like I sort of half-assed it, I wrote for 30 seconds and then I like scrolled to Instagram, whatever. I hope that you'll take 10-15 minutes at some point this week and we'll do these exercises. Journal on what you want to be different next year, and then take it a step further in how do I need to live this next year in order to make that my reality? What are the areas that I need to focus on in order for that to become possible for me? Another one, I want to be more balanced and consistent in every aspect of my life: nutrition, workouts, managing my personal responsibilities. I know this helps me be less anxious and less stressed. So good. And I love the pairing of balanced and consistent, because it's very hard to be consistent when you are being unrealistic with what you're expecting of yourself. So I feel like the balance ties in of like, I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to actually think about like, what do I have to give? And if I'm balancing all of the demands of my life with my nutrition, with my workouts, then it's going to be that much easier to be consistent. So good. And I love to sort of the cascade effect of if I'm balanced and consistent in all of these areas of my life, then that in turn is going to help my mental health. I'm going to be less anxious, I'm going to be less stressed. What impact is that going to have? It's going to be easier to be consistent if I'm not anxious and stressed all the time, right? So everything is just like this web of stuff that all contributes to you living your healthiest, your happiest, your most confident life as the best version of yourself. So I hope that you'll really kind of flesh out this exercise for yourself. We did the first part together, but the second part of like, what do I need to focus on? What work do I need to do to make this come true? Is really the second piece of this. So I want to wind down with a couple of, with an invitation for you. So next week, starting, let me pull up my calendar because I figured out when I would do this and then I have since forgotten. Okay. So next week, starting January 3rd, I'm doing a free 3-day event. You guys who are clients, of course, you're always welcome to everything, but you do not need to be a client in order to attend this 3-day event. It's going to be midday. I know a lot of you are going back to work like on Tuesday probably, but replays will be available and sent out each day. So at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday the 3rd, Thursday the 4th, Friday the 5th, I'm doing a 3-day event to help you flesh out the second part of this question, or the second question of this exercise. What work do I need to do? How do I need to actually implement the stuff to make this my reality? So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the 3 pillars of my coaching philosophy and our coaching program, Gone for Good. And each day we're going to focus on one of them. We'll do sort of an intro, sort of an educational piece at the beginning, and then we'll have time for a Q&A afterwards, which is where you can ask questions that pertain to you specifically. So day 1 is going to be where we talk about simplifying exercise and nutrition, right? So what might come up just as an example. So when we talk about being balanced and consistent in every aspect of our lives, nutrition, workouts included, what does it actually look like? Like, what should I be doing? What does balance and consistency in those areas look like? What should I be focusing my energy on so that I'm getting the most bang for my buck? How do I stop getting caught up in the 75 hards, the whole 30s, the whatevers, And what's actually going to help me be consistent, not just in January, not just to mid-February, but all the way around the year. So we're going to talk about what we call our big rock habits, which are the ones that give you the most bang for your buck. And if it's not on the list, you don't need to stress about it. So it's going to make it feel much, much simpler to know like the what to do piece. So that's going to be day one. Day two, we're going to talk about the support people that you kind of need in your quarter in order to maximize your odds of success. Of course, you can do it alone. There's nothing you can't do, but generally you're going to be easy. It's going to be easier, more successful, faster if you have support. So we're going to talk about like who those people are, who they aren't, and how to surround yourself with like-minded people who help normalize your goals and the vision you have for the future, rather than making you feel like a weirdo for, caring about your personal development. And then day three, we're going to talk about really kind of all of the beneath the surface stuff. So this is going to be everything from, I know what to do, or by day three, you will know what to do. You'll know the exercise nutrition stuff. And then we're going to get into like the why am I not doing it? We're going to get into managing personal responsibilities. We're going to get into, planning and prep, all of the stuff that is going to make the exercise and nutrition feel easier. This is the bulk of it. So day three, we're really going to dive into what are the other skills and tools that I need to work on developing this year so that by the time December 26, 2024 rolls around, I have made this my reality. Like I said, a lot of this stuff, like it's not what you would directly expect to be related to weight loss. We tend to think, okay, what do I do for workouts? What do I, how much do I eat? But a lot of the work is once I know those things, what's been standing in my way? How come I'm not feeling strong and capable and in control and intentional? How do I handle things like a bad day without turning to food? How do I address the temptations of having sweets around and wanting them? All of that stuff. So we're gonna dive deep on day three and help you not just with like the surface level strategy of number of workouts you should be doing and stuff like that, but also the deeper work that's really going to cement not just your results, but your confidence at being able to maintain your results, whatever life throws at you in the future. And this is the work. So it's, at the end of the day, losing weight itself, pretty easy. You can lose it, as long as you're in a deficit, you can you see all the time with fasting, like just don't eat for 72 hours and you'll lose weight, right? But if you really want to feel like you're going to go into the holidays like a different person, like a person who is in control and intentional and doesn't feel flustered by this time of year, the deeper work is what matters the most. So like I said, this is a free 3-day event. I know midweek is not necessarily ideal for those of you who are going back to work. Hopefully some of you get the whole following week off. My son's school is off. So probably some other people will be off. But like I said, I'll send out the replay each night and we're going to break down the whole formula and allow you to go into the new year with a completely different approach to weight loss, which is going to yield you not just more sustainable results, but a whole different way of looking and feeling about yourself, where you don't dread the holidays because you know it means weight gain, where you don't feel like the weekends always throw you off. If you want to step into the best version of yourself, this event will help you kick off the year, not with a Whole30 or a challenge at your gym, but with an approach that is actually going to help sustain you throughout the year. So if you are interested in attending that, if you're here live, just go change the chat box to just send it to me, and just send me your email address, because some of you, I can tell by your name who you are, but we've got like a phone number in here. We've got iPhone 74, so I'm not sure who everybody here is. But if you want me to register you for that 3-day event next week, starting the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, just shoot me your name and your email in a direct message in the Zoom chat. If you are not on here live, all I want you to do is open up your email where you got this link from. My email is esther@estherhaven.com. Send me the same thing, just say I'm in, and I'll get you registered for that. And I'll have a workbook. We'll walk through all the things you need to do to make this year your best year. Look at me ending 1 hour on the nose, pat myself on the back. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I know this was really kind of thrown together last minute, and I am so grateful for those of you who have attended live and joined me, and to those of you who will catch the replay at your leisure and your convenience. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible next week. You guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in 2024.